That time I got reincarnated as a demon lord, English, by LordedoMal44. 03 Playing with Adventurers PT1. It was a day like any other in the Kingdom of Bloomund, with no occurrences considered out of the ordinary or worthy of notable mention. The city was attacked every day by monsters from the Jura forest, but that was an everyday occurrence and something inevitable when living next to the forest. So why had Bloomund never tried to invade the Jura forest to get rid of the monsters and expand his domain? Well, the answer to that question was quite simple, to be honest. It was all due to the fact that within the forest there was one monster in particular. A monster far more fearsome than any of the monsters that attacked Bloomund every day. The storm dragon, Veldora. This creature, considered to have one of the greatest powers among Western nations, was a mighty dragon whose power could not be measured. This mighty storm dragon had already destroyed entire cities in the past, and even though it had been sealed within the forest of Jura, its power was still feared. For this reason, Bloomund never tried to invade the forest of Jura, trying to avoid the storm dragon's wrath and that for some reason he could break free of his seal. If there was one thing that was collective thought between Fuse, Guildmaster, and the nobility and royalty in the Bloomund Kingdom, it was that the country would be in a much better state if such a creature wasn't constantly stalking them. But that thought changed the day the storm dragon's presence stopped being felt. Despite being sealed, Storm Dragon Veldora was a being whose power was considered limitless. His disappearance, overnight, was not something Bloomund's royalty and guildmaster could simply ignore. This led to peer pressure on the guild, seeking support from adventurers, for which Fuse was only able to make available what was allowed by guild protocols. Of course, that was just what Fuse could do behind the scenes. The preparations he had secretly made, though. And that's why you've been selected for this secret mission. Check the Storm Dragon's seal status and report any things you find or occurrences that could be considered unnatural or out of the ordinary. Dismissed. Those were the only words that Fuse, the guild master, spoke to the three adventurers who were in front of him before turning his eyes to the series of papers in his hands. Fuse would pay no more attention to any of them and the three adventurers were aware of that. Even so. How dare you? Who do you think we are? That's right, don't go around giving orders to others without caring. Hey guys. You could have said these things while we were in the room, wouldn't you? They weren't where Fuse could hear them. Less than notice. Skill, water propulsion, was acquired successfully. Integrating skill, water propulsion. And extra skill, water manipulation, success. Greater than. Just like the voice spoke, water propulsion has been added to water manipulation. It made it so much easier to manipulate the water I expelled from my body, as if it was following the motions I wanted. This made it easier for me to move around. Where was I now? On the lake, of course. I went back to the underground lake for the purpose of training the water manipulation I use. I had absorbed a large amount of water into my body through the predator storage and was now using this water along with my water manipulation to move over the lake at high speed. And to think I could even fly using it, as I can release water from my entire body, it has become even easier to control. I kept moving over the lake water for a while longer, both enjoying being able to fly this way and trying to learn the sensation that this skill gives off. With that, I could compensate for my low natural mobility for being a slime and face enemies even faster than myself. This was actually the third skill that used water manipulation as a base. The other two skills were mostly offensive skills and they had proved so powerful that the rocks in the cave had been unable to withstand their blows. I had also acquired two other skills based on the use of land instead of water, which made me very happy and, at the same time, frustrated. I wanted to gain the skill, earth manipulation, that the great sage had talked about, but neither of the two skills I acquired had met the prerequisites for acquiring the new skill. I think if I acquire another skill, which meets all the remaining prerequisites, I could acquire earth manipulation right away, but for now, that's for the future. Well now. What should I do? I think I already have the power to defend myself as long as I don't have to face a boss like that dragon right off the bat. If I manage to win, I could use the predator skill to get even stronger using my enemies. Also, the other skills I have give me a good chance to increase my power, as long as I meet the prerequisites. No, there's one thing I want to know more than that right now. I thought about that as I looked in the direction of a specific rock, which within this simple, dark cave seemed to be standing out from all the others. This was a rock I had been keeping an eye on for some time, since before I started my training. It was a shiny ore. Considering I'm in a fantasy world of sorts, I shouldn't be impressed that there was ore that glowed in a cave, even more so if I took into account the fact that the cave belonged to a dragon. Still, the clairvoyance skill allowed me to see the magicules accumulated inside the stone, and I could clearly see that whatever it is, this stone is not normal. With a little hesitation, caused by the fear that this stone was some kind of trap left by that dragon for enemies who went after its treasures, I approached the stone. Of course, neither clairvoyance nor magical perception had detected any traps, but if I took that dragon's power into consideration, then it shouldn't be strange that my eyes weren't able to see something he created to deceive the eyes of his enemies. Well, never mind. I'll find out when I try. I thought about that to myself as I extended one of my arms, or a tentacle depending on how you look at it, and touched the stone. I immediately activated Predator, prepared for the worst to happen, but then. Less than analyzing. Concluded. Magistone ore. Minerals that remain in areas with large amounts of magicules, after long periods of time, absorb them and become magistone. Extremely valuable material that, after being processed, can be used for the purpose of producing high-level weapons and magic items. Greater than. Ho, so it wasn't a trap? No, more importantly, he said that this ore can be used to create weapons. I tried to imagine myself with a great golden sword created from this ore, but I discarded that image next. Making a sword for myself from this kind of ore would be useless. After all, I couldn't imagine a slime like me being able to hold and wield the sword properly. That would just be a waste of material at best. Well, there go my dreams of being a sword hero or something. Not that I planned on being some hero in the first place. Heroes were powerful entities who spent most of their lives seeking to save others. As much as love and respect from the people around me weren't bad things to get, my current goal was more something like living for myself. What I have in mind is closer to having servants serving me, willing to lay down their lives at my command and destroy kingdoms just so they can satisfy my whims. What I want is more like something closer to a demon king. I imagined myself, a slime, sitting on a black throne. Around me monsters like orcs and goblins, and even a few ogres, all marching towards a human city in a small country. All humans in a desperate attempt to run and flee, but being held back by my minions, and all being taken captive to serve me as well. Amazingly, the image didn't look bad inside my mind. Let's become a demon king, great sage. Less than. Greater than right. Let's start with collecting materials. I will collect this ore, and in the future I will get someone to serve as the weapon builder. If I became a demon king, the first could absorb a human corpse to acquire its form and use a sword. But that would still be too much to think about. For now, focus. With that thought in mind, I devoured the mage stone in front of me in one go using Predator. And then, like the hypocrite from before, I went into a frenzy in search of all the magic stone I could find inside the cave. Of course, I did this not knowing that someone who would be very troublesome in the future had listened to my words more than I realized. It had been a very long journey, but we had made it to the cave safely. Of course, we had to face monsters on the way to get here. After all, this cave was inside the great forest of Jura, known for being a sea of monsters, but thanks to all the efforts we had arrived safely in the sealed cave. Currently we were in front of what would be the last monster we would have to overcome before we reached the end of the cave, in front of the steel doors that sealed the place where Veldora had been sealed. I hadn't been to this place before, of course. After all, this area was allowed to A-rank adventurers, and only those. Our trio, made up of B-rank adventurers, could face a B-plus rank monster at most, which means we would be dead against an A-rank monster, only a group of easy prey. What was the monster that was in front of us? That was an A-rank monster called the Black Serpent. She had the ability to release a breath of poison with corrosive properties that would not only poison the target but also corrode armor and thus reduce the chances of all adventurers facing them to almost zero. Furthermore, the fact that the Black Serpent possessed the skill, sensitivity to heat sources, made getting out of his sight an even more impossible mission to accomplish. So would we face such a thing? Of course not. We would die without even having a chance to try. Guido. Did you bring it? Yes, I did. Get ready, it won't fool her for long. As Guido said, we prepare by holding all of our items and weapons. In the worst case, if we were noticed, we would be forced to have a confrontation against this monster of higher rank than ours. In the worst case, this cave would become our den. Know that if the item doesn't work and I die, I'll come back to haunt you, Guido. Ha, I'd be dead just like you, Aren. Besides, it's usually you and Cobble who have this kind of conversation. Guido laughed at my words as he held a small item in his hands. This magic item had the function of generating heat, which we would use to trick the black serpent's sensitivity to heat sources by drawing attention in another direction as we passed out of his sight. This was the plan that, according to Guido, other groups of adventurers applied in similar missions in order to deal the initial blow to the black serpent, which would guarantee them the advantage during the beginning of the battle. And that's exactly what we did. Guido threw the item in one direction and the black serpent reacted to the collision noise at the same moment, turning its face towards the item. Thanks to the heat generated by the item, the black serpent mistook it for prey it could hunt, following the direction of the magic item. In the meantime, the three of us advanced on the opposite side, unseen by the black serpent. Final step completed. With that, we remain calm. The black serpent was theoretically supposed to be the last monster we would have to face before reaching the doors that guarded the place where Veldora and her seal were kept. As we were sure of this, we continued walking for a while a little more relaxed and, as we thought, without much difficulty, we arrived safely at the doors. Ha, we're finally here. With that, we got through everything. I just hope we can get back as easily as we got here. It would be a shame to go through all this just to have trouble on the way back. Don't say those things. Don't you know it's bad luck? Me and Cabal got into yet another of our arguments, like the ones we got into from time to time, and while we were distracted, Guido did his job. As the rogue of our group, Guido was the only person capable of unlocking a pair of doors as rusty as these, so the work we were supposed to do was limited to guarding at best. Cabal and I, unlike Guido, were of no use when it came to anything other than combat, so we would guard the tunnel. Well, Guido was a good rogue, so it didn't take as long for him to finish unlocking the doors to the room where Veldora had been sealed as we thought. And just like that, the pair of rusty but still imposing doors opened before our eyes. The exterior and interior weren't all that different from each other, the two being composed of the solid rock alloy that made up most of the mountain, except that inside, there didn't seem to be any sign of the magistones that gleamed on the outside of the doors. This should have been the other way around, as much more ore should have been concentrated inside, but we didn't stop long to think about that sort of thing before entering. Phew. It finally opened. All that locking mechanism seemed to have rusted over time. Guido complained, wiping the sweat from his forehead tiredly. Yeah, I bet. No one even tried to get in here for like 300 years, right? There's no record of anyone trying to get in. Are you sure we're safe? Aren't we leaving ourselves open to sudden attacks? I asked awkwardly. After all, we passed the black serpent, but if there was a monster even more powerful than it in here, what would we do? Gahaha. Cobble suddenly burst out laughing, pride written all over his face. Come on, maybe the guy was invincible a century ago, but now he's just disappeared. I bet all that big lizard's power must be gone, you know. I've faced a basilisk alone before. The dragon won't be a problem. That damn story again. We all knew that the Cabal's story was a lie. After all, Basilisk was a B+ rank monster. There was no way the B rank adventurer could face a monster like that, even more so if he was alone. For such a monster, even an A rank adventurer would have a hard time, since if the petrifying gaze the Basilisk finds you, you could consider yourself a dead man. He was close to complaining to the Cabal, commenting on how impossible such a story was, when Guido raised his hand, asking for silence. Well, enough talking. I need silence to activate the concealment. As soon as Guido said that, we shut our mouths, giving him space to concentrate. If we had to find a stronger than average monster, in order to avoid combat, our best option was this concealment. This was one of the arts used by rogues to make their job easier, which was more like one of the few spells rogues could use. The magic would reduce the light reflected from the target's bodies to appear to be transparent, which gave us a chance of not being noticed. Of course, this sort of thing wouldn't work on enemies like the Black Serpent, who sees using the skill, sensitivity of heat sources. Well, it would be useful, so Guido activated his magic. With that, we started walking, keeping as quiet as possible so that monsters wouldn't notice us. And after taking only a few steps, A strong, chilling feeling crept up my back. Something will attack us. I turned around to yell for everyone to duck, but before I could do that I saw the way a figure, moving at a high speed, suddenly collided with Guido's body. The force behind the impact had been enough to knock Guido to the ground, and almost instantly the concealment was cancelled. Kabul unsheathed his sword the second he realized what was happening, and I gripped my staff more firmly, ready to support them with magic so we could face whatever this thing was. Still, what we saw when our eyes found the one attacking us was beyond all our expectations. Poyon, Poyon, a wild slime appear.